It's a simple game that we're building here with Flutter and Flame. The button here is a Flutter widget icon, and this text portion here is a Flutter, it's actually an animated text kit. So to actually control this, we're going to apply the BLoC state management system. This tutorial is not needed for you to use Flame, but if you want to practice using BLoC, this is what we're going to cover today. And this tutorial is actually going to use a Cubit first, which is quite similar to a BLoC. So first we're going to need to put a bunch of packages in here. So Flutter pub add, and we're going to add a bunch of different packages to get started with. So let's start off with, so you're going to need the Flame BLoC. We're going to need equatable. We'll need Flutter BLoC. So Flame BLoC actually will import Flutter BLoC, but I like to add it in separately. So I'm also going to add in the BLoC. The main one you need here is Flame BLoC and equatable. In the extensions here, I have the BLoC, and you will need this to follow this tutorial. It makes it much easier. I also have this Dart data class generator. I'm using the one by HZGood. There's several of these. And you of course need the Flutter extension. I'm using also Flutter awesome snippets and the Flutter extension for VS Code. Okay. So with the lib folder, I'm going to create a new subfolder. I'm going to call it Cubit. And within here, I'm going to do this right click. And because I have the extension installed, I'm going to click on Cubit, new Cubit. This will only appear if you have the BLoC extension on VS Code. So I'm going to select it. Opens up this menu here at the top. I'm going to type in dialog. This will be the name of my Cubit. So I'm going to make a Cubit dialog for my game here. So I created these two files. If you're using BLoC, it would create 3 files, but we don't use the state in the Cubit. So I'm going to rename this, and I'm going to call it dialog. So you can have multiple Cubits or multiple BLoCs, and within the subfolder of this main Cubit thing, we're going to store the individual Cubits here. So this new file that was created is the Cubit, and I'm going to delete this abstract. I'm also going to delete this. So it'll be pretty skinny at this point. And we'll add in some, whoops. So we'll go final int dialog ID, and I'll put 2 parentheses in here. I'm going to do control dot, and it will generate the constructor for me. So I'm going to put my mouse over that dialog ID. I'm going to do control dot again. I'm going to insert the copy with. I'm going to do control dot again. I'll put the equatable. And this thing is red because they just imported this, which we don't need because this is part of the dialog Cubit.dart, and we already have that. So I'm just delete that. And now we have this. What it did is added this dialog ID right here. Okay, let's continue on. Whoops. We'll do control dot again, and I'll generate the toString. And we just got rid of the dialog initial, so your Cubit will be red right here, but we're going to fix that. So we're going to create a factory constructor. And we'll call it initial. And it's going to return the 101. So we just have this factory constructor. It's constructor, but it's named and it has the word factory in front of it. And we're setting up the initial state with a dialog ID of 101 for our storyline. Back into Cubit. So we just deleted this, right? So it's back into Cubit. I'm going to start off with a simple method to increase the Cubit. Increase the dialog ID. So this is a method. I'm just making up this name, right? It's not a keyword here. So emit is a keyword. It's part of the BLoC structure. And the state, I have it because this is part of the dialog state. And so I'm going to have the state and copy with. And we go dialog ID. I'm going to increase it by 1. Dialog ID plus 1. So quite simple so that we can start getting practice with the Cubit and the BLoC. Let's go to the main.dart file here. I'm going to select the material app and going to go to the light bulb. I'm going to wrap with the BLoC provider. Where is it? So many of these blocks. So, okay, it's BLoC provider. If you have multiple blocks, you can do multi-block provider, but maybe we'll start off with one for now and add multiple blocks in later. So it's red. I'm going to control dot, and then I just imported Flutter BLoC here. And with this BLoC provider, I'm also going to put the name of my Cubit in there. And I think I'm going to break this onto a separate widget. Might have a problem with the context otherwise. So I'll extract it as a widget. And I'll call the widget the akemi app. Beautiful. You know, I'm actually going to move this down, I think, below the scaffold here. So I'm going to cut it out. And I'm going to place it ahead of the stack here. All right, so let's go back into these flame layer right here. I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call the file flame layer. Maybe this will be clearer as well too. The flame layer is going to be a stateless widget, and we'll just call it flame layer. And we're going to move the game widget, right? So the game widget is a Flutter widget, but it's from the Flame system. And we will instantiate the akemi game here instead. So we did import the akemi game. Back in the main.dart, I'm going to use the flame layer instead. So our stack is now clear. It's flame layer and Flutter layer. And the flame layer right here is running the akemi game. So at this point, the game still worked. We're still not changing the text, but at least we know that everything is working up to this point. So in the flame layer folder, we have this akemi game. And right now we're saving the state in the game itself. So we're using this int dialog ID 101 from the game. But we're going to eventually move it into the Cubit. So dialog Cubit, and we'll call it dialog Cubit. So I just hit control dot, and now we have this constructor that's expecting this Cubit here. So let's go back into the flame layer. So now it's expecting a dialog Cubit. Read. And this is red, so I'll go to control dot. And I'm going to import Flutter BLoC. Okay, we don't need this. Okay, it's still running. I'm going to comment out to play the music for now. So in the onload method, I'm currently adding the dialog component right there, but I'm going to add a flame multi-block provider, although we only have one block right now. It'll pave the way for future additional providers. And the provider will be a single flame block provider dot value. And the value will be the dialog Cubit right there. And we're going to tell it that it's our dialog Cubit and the dialog state. And to put it here. There you go. And the children, right now we just have one child, but we'll have more. Is a dialog component. And we'll test the game. It still works. There still should be no changes, but we're off to a good start, and we'll just make sure that it works at regular intervals. So instead of having it like right here with the dialog ID from the state that's saved in the game, we're going to use it Cubit, dialog Cubit dot state dot dialog ID. And instead of adding it directly to the variable that's in the game, we're going to dialog Cubit dot increase dialog ID, which was the method that we created in the earlier one of the earlier steps here. So our Cubit has that. we can comment on this, but there will be a problem here. So instead of having the game.dialog ID, that will just grab it from the dialog. Oops. Cubit.state.dialog ID. So this dialog cubit here, we just set it up, right? It's this one here. So we can get rid of that. It's still working. I'm gonna move this out into a separate method. So I just selected the switch statement to switch the character. I'm gonna select extract method here, and then we'll call it change character. And we'll just make it slightly easier to read. Probably break this out into move character too. Move character. Okay, let's go back into the Flutter layer. And right now we've hard-coded the, it's only using the first piece of dialog right there. But we're going to wrap this in a block builder. So I'm going to select the light bulb, and I'll go block builder. And we need it dialog. Whoops, what's going on here? What is that? Dialog state and dialog Cubit, which is what we created, and then we'll need to import it. Okay, so now we have to state in here, and we can specify, maybe I'll set the string here, call it dialog text equals story line 100 dialog, which is the data file that we call it state, and it's dialog ID minus 101.text. So now we have this dialog text that we can use. A little easier to read. But if we do this, it's likely not going to update. Okay, so it's the same text here, right? So this, it's not rebuilding. So we need to use a key to get it to rebuild. And because this animated text kit is a stateless widget. Okay. So right within this animated text kit, we're going to use the keyword key from the animated text kit, and I'll have a value key, which I'll put it as a string, and it will be the dialog text. So now I have this key. We'll give it another shot here. Hi Kenji. Now the text is changing. I think there's only 3 pieces of text in here so far. So let's add some more text. So I'm starting the text in this subfolder data storyline 100. It's our first storyline. There's a typo here. So he shows up at this tea house. He wants to talk to her. They're friends from before, so she's like, yes, she'll talk. And he's looking pretty serious. He's actually gonna ask her on a date here, but there's going to be some issues with this date here. So they'll be talking in the tea house. Everything is fine, you know, kind of fine. He's a bit nervous to ask her out, but they've known each other for a while, so she's definitely gonna talk to him and hear what he has to say here. And he doesn't want to talk in the tea house, you know, someone might walk in, so wants to talk outside for his pitch to Akemi. And we'll change the character here to start the tea house. And she's gonna go, yeah, you know, we've known each other a long time, so of course she's gonna talk, sure. So they're going to the roof of the tea house. It's kind of a modern building, so it has a nice roof here. And it's a beautiful day. And it's kind of set up to make his pitch. So let's check it out here. You know, put on the sound and see what it looks like. Is the typewriter working? Okay, there's an issue. Let's check it out. And maybe the issue is I need to hard restart it here. Next video, I'm going to switch the background when they go up on the roof of the this tea house. It's kind of a modern tea house, and they can get onto the roof, and then he'll make his pitch to ask her out on a date.